What's up, guys? This is Jay and Scott with Revolution Radio. So, Scott, we were gonna do this weekend, and we thought, well, we have an update on a few stories that we wanted to just kind of touch up over. But what happened? Congress was incredibly lazy. So it wasn't until about 30 minutes ago did we actually get the update on the stimulus bill. And look, I was going to get a hold of you yesterday, and I was going to say, well, we might as well go ahead and do it because there's like a 99% chance they're going to pass this, but there's that like 1% that they wouldn't. And I also have to say this Saturday, I was like, well, it's going to happen by probably 4 or 5 Sunday. That's what I was told. Like, basically, early afternoon on Sunday, we should know if it passed. And lo and behold, it didn't. And so I was a little apprehensive to just like jump the gun and do it before it was completely confirmed. But yes, about 9 p.m. Eastern time, um, Congress finally did something and they passed the stimulus package. So I do have it up on screen for everyone who can't or who's listening, but it does have the $600 direct payments to adults and children. There is no cap on family. I know that's a question people have been asking. And essentially, the other question I've heard, well, when do they phase it out? Basically, it's the same thing. Like, if you got the check last time, you'll get one this time. Um, that's basically how it works out. They start phasing it out at 75,000, but that's what they did last time as well. And if you have already, like, if you received one and you changed your banking information, like if you had direct deposit, the best thing to do is go to the website and get that updated as soon as possible because I believe they're going full speed ahead with the direct payments and they're going to try to get them out before January hits. So
Yeah, they
probably,
said it would just be a real quick process, and direct. If you do have direct deposit, you should use that because my father, it was like a month before he got his, and I got mine real quick last time. So it makes a big difference.
it does. Now, how long it's going to take for them to update that in their system, I don't know, to be honest. That is also, and I think this is just as exciting, for our economy and for our people. 300 boost in federal unemployment benefits. That's huge. I was asked a question this weekend regarding the bill and said, if you don't reach $100 threshold, a weekly unemployment $100 threshold, do you still get the 300? And yes, you do. That was something that a few Republicans were trying to get. That was like the main thing they were working on, is if you didn't qualify for at least 100 a week, then you shouldn't get the 300 boost, but that didn't pass. They didn't get that to go, so it was not in the deal. No matter what um, dollar amount you receive in unemployment, you will still get this $300 boost per week. And as far as that's concerned, it will last for 11 weeks. Now, if you're on some other unemployment benefits right now, like let's say from your company or something like that, you don't have to transition, you don't have to do anything. What will happen is when those run out, then you will get the 11 weeks of the $300 boost. So that's kind of an interesting situation with this as well. I don't think that applies to a lot of people, especially right now, but there might be a few people that does. The other thing is we did get 300 billion for small businesses, and then billions. It doesn't exactly say for vaccine distribution and for schools. There's a lot of other stuff to go in here. Um, let's see. Yeah, the first week should be the week following the week of the 20. So following next week, that's when this should all kick in. As far as unemployment is concerned. And the bill does extend through March 14th of 2021. I'm actually just answering questions on here. I know I'm not reading the questions, but I'm just reading them out. Um, so, actually, follow me on Twitter, JC Show VIP. I will retweet some stuff out there that has some more of the questions that we've been asked. There's something that goes into taxes. Someone had asked about what extra taxes are tacked onto this, and that's like a 5-page little paper there that I'm not going to read out on here, and there's a lot to it, so I'll retweet that. I think I'm pretty much caught up though with a lot of the questions that were asked. Um,
I didn't see anything any flags specifically for taxes or unless you have a small business and some other things. I didn't. Those are usually associated with um, people, some unemployment, but that had to do with probably people who were skirting a line between unemployment, regular unemployment, and the stimulus.
well, oh, and here's one I just found that, and this was a big part of what people asked, or specific question. Um, if you had a child in 2020, does that child get the check? Yes and no. So you will not receive a direct payment, but you can claim that check and the first check on your taxes, and that will be a write-off. So yes and no, but that was one of the things that was talked about. Okay, now we got like all that out of the way, um, and I've been talking for a while. Scott, how do you feel about this bill being passed? Did you think it was going to? Where does it land for you?
Well, I mean, I saw Rubio get up and bitch at both sides about the overall debt that's building, and basically that even though people can use this, that we must remember that this is just making that debt grow, and a lot of economic forecasters see quite a bit of dramatic inflation soon. So um, I'm not one to tell people to buy anything but needs, not amenities. But if you're planning on purchasing something and the prices are right for Christmas time and for all this, everything that's on sale, it may be a good time to buy them because very shortly there may be some dramatic inflation, and that $300 or $250 4K TV may end up being $400 soon, just because the dollar is going to lose some value. And that may be things that people need to take into, and especially if you're wanting to refinance your home, doing mortgages that's never been lower. If you can pull a refinance, save yourself some money and go to the bank and do it. It's a lot of bullshit paperwork and all that stuff, but it can save you a lot of money in the long run, especially if you've got like a 30-year mortgage or something and you've only got a few years on it. Might as well refinance it and reduce your payment even that much more because interest rates are so low, like 2%, people.
Was
That's
it
crazy low.
was it Rubio or Rand Paul? Or
Um,
did you? I mean, because I saw Rand Paul doing it. You
Maybe it
actually,
was Rand Paul. Yeah, it was Rand Paul, and
I, I was gonna say
he did
Rubio's
kind
a
of.
he's more for. In fact, he was kind of shaming that it wasn't enough.
Yeah. No, you're right. I'm glad you corrected me because those two are definitely different. It was Rand Paul. No, and that's important. I don't know. They don't look exactly the same, but being both Republicans, I kind of just because he was speaking as far as you know, and he was shaming Republicans as much, if not more, simply because they people who for all the military spending and this and that have gone on, and he specifically states the Bush administration, the Clinton administration, the Obama administrations, how the debt's growing and what our GDP is, and we don't our entire GDP is not enough to cover the debt increases from even keeping it level. So it's basically like somebody's going to have to pay for it eventually. Now we know that if you split the entire debt up for every citizen in the United States, it's $136,000 a piece.
So
So,
I actually love that you bring that up, and namely because he did talk about that, and it was incredibly annoying, especially from somebody who he's a lifelong politician. He always talks about the um, power of um, the his ability to his libertarian base, I should say, and
right.
free market and blah blah blah. This man is worth over $3 million being a politician. Like, oh,
Which that's probably
yeah,
on the lower end for a lot of those politicians.
well, no, like Bernie, who's barely worth it, and got it all from writing a book. But my point is like this. Well, people are hurting, and free market capitalism. I mean, I don't work in the private sector, but other people should. Like, he's so hypocritical. And one thing that irritates me too is, hey, you want to fix it, buddy? Check it out. Raise taxes on the rich. Jeff Bezos could pay every one of his employees $105,000 each, and he would still have the same amount of money that he had before the pandemic. Think about that. I mean,
Oh yeah, I'm
that's
sure
an
that's true.
insane amount. The tech
Yeah, and I
companies,
bring that up
you know,
just to not. It is hypocritical for him to say that, and more. I'm just interested in the numbers, and to me, separating those people and what his intent was, the basic economics of printing money, you're going to see inflation, and that's just a part of it. And we also have our national credit rating by whatever European bank or whatever that establishes nations credit ranking as a whole. And it's a bad thing when people's money gets devalued, and just people just need to be prepared that that is going to be something that is a part of an economic downturn, even though it seems rather forced this time. And so, it's always better if the numbers are better, but
yeah, I mean, I think
uh,
part of the big issue with this is, and you're gonna see the Republicans this is their talking point for one, just to go back to the Rand Paul thing, which is kind of funny that we both saw it because this was just like randomly on C-SPAN. I don't know if you saw it like on a different outlet, but
I
I
saw
saw.
on YouTube, I saw the 15-minute cut of his speech.
But one thing I thought, like, he's so partisan already, even though it seems like he's not. He didn't mention the biggest jump in our deficit, which was under Trump. Didn't mention it at all,
Uh,
and I thought that was
I
kind of
think he did.
funny.
He did actually mention the amount of money, the increase under the Trump administration. It was the last part of it. He went from,
He went
I think
Bush Obama, and that he never talked. And part of it is because he voted for the tax cut. And that caused so much because when rich people don't pay their tax, like let's look at it this way. Out of 100% of America's wealth, out of 100% of it, 85% of that is owned by the top 10%, right? And so when you
I
don't
would think it'd be
tax
even lower, like the
when
top 2%.
when you don't tax that 10%, then who's paying the taxes? Who's paying those bills? No one. And that's again that goes into the issue, like if you and I had made as much money as Jeff Bezos had made this year, we would expect, oh man, we're going to be paying a butt ton of taxes. He's probably going to pay zero again. And then they're going to whine and complain, well, we're going into a deficit. On the other hand, they're passing tax cuts for these same rich big corporation assholes who are causing the deficit themselves by not paying their fair share.
I agree. I mean, that's totally in line with. But the other reality is, and I'm not defending the having those kind of tax cuts, but we see all the time when you tell a company, "Hey, pay your fair share," pay this, you need to pay this in taxes. They go, well, hey, I can just move my operations and my production and all this other stuff to these other countries because I'm already established. It'll cost me, as much as you propose to tax me to move my operations to such and such country, my production. And they do it.
So, I
And,
mean, no,
and
and you're right. Here's the problem, though. with that is that our politicians are cool with that and let them do that because like let's say if I was in power and they said, "Hey, well, if you're gonna raise our taxes, we're moving." For one, I would bring up that we are in the top 10 at the lowest tax havens in the world. They don't like to bring that up because they say, "Well, we're not competitive." We're actually incredibly competitive. We
Oh,
are,
sure.
you know,
And
so
then
we are one of
states
the
individually from there can be separated. That's why HP and Elon Musk and all these other companies are going from California to Texas.
But yeah, I mean, we're one of the better, But let's say, oh, I'm going to go to zero, and they talk about that all the time. We should have 0% 0%, tax on corporations and capital gains and blah blah blah. Okay, I would say fine, leave. But guess what? You get no protection from us as far as think about all of the Fed dump bailout money that has been given to these corporations from '08 to now. We're talking
Or they'd have to
trillions.
pay everything back.
That,
That would be nice.
yeah, that too. But you just don't know. And guess what? No government contracts. Um, we're focusing on manufacturing here anyway, so go ahead, that's fine. I, but again, we've talked about this so many times. These same politicians, no, they're cool with that because they own so much stock in those companies. Hell,
Well, and those
they worked for
corporations,
those
right?
corporations.
They and they're international to begin with. I mean, I think another fear as far as when it comes to technology, military spending, military technology, and all that kind of stuff, we're pretty. I mean, we do suffer some obvious cyber attacks and things like that from other countries, but for the most part, they're trying to steal intellectual property. And there's a reason they want our intellectual property is because it's valuable, and they obviously this technologies directly correlate to military power and new technologies and stuff like that. So it's kind of like if they're playing the game. Well, if you don't be nice to us, we could go give this technology to China. I mean, I'm already friends with China. What happens if I just go over there and do
No,
that?
you're
And
right.
that's
You're
kind of
right. And
it's
we play
they're
ball.
all.
We play ball with that, and we say, "Oh well, we don't want you to do that. Let's go ahead and tax our people more and give our people less." Or because we're going to be slaves to China and big corporations either way. It is repugnant, and then we wonder why everything is so corrupt. Like I think we did it last show. I mentioned all of the different countries and all of their UBIs to this pandemic, and guess what? Every one of those countries is doing so much better than we are economically. We're still gonna hurt after this, and this is crumbs. I want to be clear. There's so many people who are on, you know, the side of saying this stimulus package, sure, whatever. It's gonna be fine to boost Christmas sales and stuff like that, but it's garbage. It's not. There's not much in there. Outside of that $300 unemployment benefit boost, it's really nothing. Because here's the other thing, and be clear with this because this is something that Rand Paul didn't bring up. This is something that none of the conservatives have talked about. Do you know this is actually like a $1.7 billion increase like in deficit because we had this other money. They just moved it. Like it literally this is only going against the deficit by 1.7 billion, I believe. Because yes, the rest of the money for this was already in play. Like they just moved it around to create this stimulus.
I mean, they had the money. They had to decide what to do with to avoid the government shutdown. So I mean that was and
But
that's going to
like the
be.
PPP money, like that was already there. Like it's actually pretty convoluted how like they're gonna bring up that it's a $900 billion bill, but no, it's actually not because so much of this was from the last COVID bailout. And the other thing that got me too, and this bothered me, is that so Ron Johnson, you know who he is, don't you?
Don Johnson's brother.
They both did they did separate versions of Miami Vice. No, Ron Johnson, he's kind of like Rand Paul's brother, and they both do this whole libertarian blah blah blah. Um, so he said that $1,200 was too much. He's the one who stopped the $1,200 direct payments, right? And his whole thing was, there again, I'm a libertarian, blah 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 blah. Deficit, deficit. I'm gonna grandstand when it comes to helping the people, but I'm cool when it comes to helping corporations. And I mean, he didn't say that, but paraphrasing for him. Anyway, though, this jerk off held up the stimulus on Saturday night. And do you know why he held it up?
Nope.
So there was wording in it that allowed the Fed to directly stimulate medium-sized businesses and municipal businesses. He threw a fit until this wording was changed and that was no longer a possibility. And you might be thinking, well, that's pretty cool, I guess. Like, it's not like he's saying no, it's not helping small businesses, and you're right. But here's the funny thing, in that stimulus package, there is also wording that allows the Fed to support Wall Street and big corporations. He said nothing about that. He just went after the medium-sized businesses and then municipal businesses, and namely because it has to affect state funding, and he didn't want to do that. It's just so hypocritical the way these people are. It's like, oh no, we can throw all of our money and go into massive debt for Wall Street, where by the way, it's a money pit. We never get that money back. But
Oh
we're
yeah,
we're
it's
not
it's
going to.
getting money. It's for investment for those corporations to feel like, well, they still want us here.
Yeah, yeah, that's basically it. We're just giving it to the rich to recycle, and it's literally like it's a form of communism. Believe it or not, it totally is when you're taking money indirectly from people and giving it to other people. And especially when those people that get the money are already wealthy, already have so much power and money, they can run this country times and time over. But yeah, it's pretty disturbing how little it is. And again, they're gonna browbeat us and say, well, I don't know what else you want. This was all this money, blah blah blah. But it wasn't. It wasn't even that. They just rearranged funds and they ended up adding 1.7 billion to the deficit. And again, let's take what they did with the like you brought it up earlier, the military spending. How much more did we add to the deficit on that this year? Over
Yeah, I have no idea.
1.7 billion. About, I think it was 4.1 billion. Well, how come that's not going to completely ruin us? You know what I'm saying? Like it's like I think you and I had this conversation. I was telling you about how I don't trust
And you're
dem.
saying it's just billion, not trillion, because you
No,
know
yeah, the whole
these days I almost think that the government throws around the B word, you
right.
know, just for
No,
for like for fun.
no, because see, Nancy Pelosi screwed up the best stimulus package we had available, and that was 1.8 trillion, and
Right.
she was playing politics with it, and so after that, this one was half of that size, so it's 900 billion, and
So we should just take our $600 checks and shut up. Huh?
right, right, and that's my whole that's my whole point is there's all this finger wagging going on over. Eh, I mean, not really that much. It's not that big of a deal. And in fact, we should be complaining that's not enough, but they love to come out and say to us, "Oh, you should be thankful for what you got. You ruined the country just for your little stimulus." And yet turn a blind eye to the trillions we give to Wall Street. And it doesn't help Main Street. It doesn't help the average American. In fact, it hurts the average American. It takes jobs out of blue collar workers' hands. And,
Well,
go ahead.
humanity will have to evolve past a point, and I don't mean this in any support of communism or socialism straight out, but it seems like that the standard of living has gone up so much where I forget what I saw the other day. There were people who were on full assistance and some other stuff, but they were fighting over a PlayStation, and I'm just like, it's hard to think that you're really in need when there are people in real need because you're fighting over spending $500 on a toy, and not that the rest of us don't have that toy or want that toy, because I know most of us don't have a PlayStation or an Xbox simply because of availability. But
Yeah, some of
but
you lowly
it
people.
seems yeah, it seems like a lot of people we're just greedy. I mean, and I want to say that generally speaking, not any race or sex in particular. I mean, Americans are kind of hoardy greedy. I mean, we really are. And I don't mean you need to give all your life savings away to some homeless shelter or some charity, because those charities are just as greedy. And I do know specifics about what kind
No,
of percentages of philanthropy actually makes it to help people. You should volunteer your time if you want to help a charity, not just write them a check.
no, I think
But
I think you're right, definitely. I mean, the only thing with that is if we cut out, because I've heard this, and there's that welfare queen argument too that I've heard. And by the way, I worked retail for more years than I wanted to admit. I never ran into that welfare queen that everyone talks about, but whatever, not the point. But
well, no, I'm just
if we
my
cut no, and
idea
I
with
know
greed
that's
was that
uh,
goes all the way up the chain to where even Americans who have an opportunity and have the ability to really give back, they don't, and
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
because that it's not just American greed. I think
People.
it's basically written in our DNA. All the way back from when we were hairy, chimpy looking things running around like, hey man, you got 4 apples. You think you can share an apple? Fuck you, they're my apples, bitch. Just like I ain't sharing my apple.
You know what? I actually think you're wrong about that.
Yeah, we thought that we were wrong until Jane Goodall actually ran into the chimpanzees that murdered each other
Well, no,
and killed
no,
each other
like,
over greed. And
yeah, no, yeah, but it's been so, I don't know, it's been completely uh, exacerbated by American culture. Meaning this, like, I just recently discovered uh, more about Hanukkah. Like, I had no idea. Do you know, like, in Hanukkah, like, traditionally, like, in Israel and other countries that celebrate, like, the Jewish people there, they don't give each other, like, there's no presents every day. Like, it's small, like, little, like, get by stuff. And there's not, like, video game systems and crap like that. Like, uh, in a lot of like Christmas around the world, they really don't go out and buy tons of,
right,
they
no,
don't buy cars, they don't buy. It's like, you got socks and an apple, and like,
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say, because my wife is definitely more financially destitute than I was. I had parents that both worked, but Christmas came around. There was no such thing as I want this, I'm going to get this. That never happened when I was a kid. And it didn't make me hate my parents for not buying me the expensive transformer or the kid down the street that got a 50cc kid size dirt bike for Christmas. And you saw other people getting extravagant presents, and you're like, damn, that's unbelievable. Why
yeah,
why
yeah.
don't I get that?
And no, I
And
I totally did that. I was the jealous person who was like, oh, this is bullshit.
yeah, I mean, I probably thought some of those things. Looking back, you're like, oh well, that was stupid.
Oh yeah.
I'm an adult now. I probably would have just killed myself on that bike. But uh, the point is, there is an amount of American greed, and it's reflected in our culture. And the scariest part is, for the most part, the world, and I do mean the world, laps up our media culture, whether it be movies, television,
Oh
sports,
yeah, yeah,
you
for
know, all
sure.
be but football. You would be surprised at who the most famous people in the world are, and it changes so fast. It used to be Michael Jackson. Everyone knew who Michael Jackson was around the planet. But these days, it's actually changing, on a monthly basis because everyone, even in people in the Congo have cell phones these days. And I don't know how to
Yeah,
put that in perspective, but
a lot of it's K-pop now, man. Like,
I
yeah.
guarantee the Congo ain't listening to no K-pop.
Oh, I don't know, man. Like, I don't listen to it. I don't know much about it, but I always know that the numbers on it are huge,
Yeah,
like
the
insanely huge.
and we don't I don't personally understand K-pop. That's a whole different. That's little girls in singing death metal, and doing like I've seen some
That's
things.
something else, and that's baby metal, which is actually pretty tight. Some pretty awesome musicians there. But no, I think it's, this is the best of the. See, the thing that irritates me about this stimulus package ultimately is the fact that it reminds me of Obamacare. We could have had something better. The Democrats farted around and screwed up. Someone had to come in and save the day at the last minute. And since it was done at the last minute, there was no organization. Nothing major could really be done.
Too
And
many compromises.
yeah, and so we basically got, you know what we got? We got an appetizer from Applebee's that has pube hair in it, but we're starving. So it's like it's food kind of, but it's also pubic hair and from Applebee's. Like and at the same, and that's what irritates me when I hear, like when I saw Rand Paul do his little speech, and I'm like, really? Really, Mister? I sued a dude for $1 million. I'm worth over 3 million, but yet I get my medical treatment done in Canada. Mister, oh, let capitalism be capitalism, yet you fucking pull punches for them to avoid paying taxes.
Yet
So
your
you,
wealth is based on connections you established in a political career, and not from
yes,
actual, invention or innovation. You just kind of skimming off the top.
yes, yes, no, exactly, all of that, and but look, I can't deny the fact that there are millions of people who are at least going to be able to sleep for the next week or two, and they can, or maybe month or two. I should have said month or two, but like they'll at least know that they're going to be fine for a little bit longer. But I do think, we're kicking down um, a problem. We're just kicking it down the road, and we're going to have to deal with it at some point because
Yeah, the businesses that are gone, and and that's one thing that was uh, kind of bitched about during some of those sessions was the hypocrisy. And that's one thing that he did talk about that was not as, at least seemed about it, the hypocrisy of the closings, the hypocrisy of, well, he was directly correlating money that was going to the state and to governors who are, uh, as he put it, they were the more extreme lockdown governors were reinforced that they can continue doing lockdowns on small businesses, but they were doing it on a hypocritical level and choosing which ones open and which ones closed
so.
based on,
But the thing
you
is,
know,
though, is that that would be true, or at least that would be an argument he could use if we were sending money to the state. And we're not sending money to any states. Like that's not
right.
included in, and they're still doing lockdowns. And part of it is because, like, look at California. They had 0% availability for ICU. The entire state had no
Oh
ICU
yeah, no,
beds.
in
Like,
California's,
what
you
do you
know,
do? Well, Christine, who is not part of the show, obviously, so using her name is weird, but a person we know. I mean, her and I got in a debate over this too, because she was like, "Well, I don't. I just think everyone's going to get COVID, and we should just go back to normal." And it's like, yeah, that sounds great until we have no room in a hospital, and we have car accidents and people have heart attacks because we don't know how to eat right. And what do we do then?
They're
Like,
just, yeah, wait till you call the ambulance to come get, your mother or your child or something. And they go, sorry, we don't have any available. They're all busy.
yeah, and like this is what you and I were talking about before when we were like, look, what would have been awesome? Had leadership stepped up and said, look, we're probably going to do lockdowns of some sort, but here's what else. We're going to emphasize that people use curbside businesses. If you want to continue to, eat out and enjoy that kind of stuff, then, prioritize doing pickup and delivery and things like that. Keep those businesses going. By the way, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull the whole drinking beer. You want to order alcohol from a pub? Go ahead, order it. You can drive it to your house. You can. We're gonna let them bottle it during this time. Buy a six pack from your local bar. You know, you can take it home and drink. It's not the same, but it's better. And we would have been able to save a lot of businesses. But we just had no one step up and do that. We had, and again, they try to they. I've heard that argument that that Brandon Paul was bringing up earlier that well, these just incentivize lockdowns, but they don't. Like they're still having to lock down because of what's going on. It's not a perfect situation, but there was ways around it that they're just ignoring, and it's I don't know. It really is dishonest. You know what I mean?
Well, at this point, they can't claim hindsight anymore. So it's almost like they have an opportunity to, for this wave or for this part of it to make the correct decision.
Yes,
And
yeah.
instead, it
Every
doesn't seem like that's happening.
And every single one of them, by the way, Gavin Newsom, Cuomo, I don't care what state you're in, your governor could be leading and doing things different with the 2020 hindsight. Like, hey, that kind of sucked. Let's not do that again. Let's
Yeah, Cuomo will probably put more people in the nursing homes than them.
right, right, and basically shut down all curbside businesses. Uh, yeah, no, it's not right. It's messed up, but you know, whatever. The point is, is at least for a couple more months, people have get some money, and hopefully some people will be able to have a pretty decent Christmas. Look, let's go
Or
out on
some
a high
groceries, or
note.
at least a Christmas dinner.
Yeah, no, and that's what I mean by a decent Christmas is just, hey, we're not going to be hungry. Awesome. Like, um, or Netflix so they can watch some Christmas shows. Like people need something to get through this time. Netflix is a pretty good option. But no, I do think though that like this is a good thing, like I said, but it's just it's not enough. That's the main problem. It's just not enough. Um, so I did want to talk about one other thing that's been pretty big, and I kind of wanted your input on this because it's been big in Twitter community and the left wing. But so starting about 2 weeks ago, Jimmy Dore, you know who he is, don't you?
Love Jimmy Dore.
Okay, so he went on Rising, actually, I think is where he first did this,
Hmm.
um, where he was pushing AOC and the squad to demand that Nancy Pelosi bring up a vote on Medicare for all. And if she didn't, if she won't commit to bringing up that vote, then they weren't going to vote for her as Speaker of the House. So
Yeah, try to force her to resign.
this kind of brought in many talking points, many strategy. People on both on the left were taken to two sides because it seems like everybody's favorite political person took a stance on this. Actually, what's interesting enough is uh, San Diego Chargers running back Justin Jackson was the only one who had a direct exchange with AOC on this, and because he backs this plan as well. And I'm not going to read word for word what she said, but essentially she said that we have to trust the process. Essentially, that there was other stuff that they were trying to get that would be more obtainable, and that this ultimately wouldn't do anything. And she didn't explain very well at all. But it does go into the complete division on the left on this issue. And to be honest, as I am on the left side, I can see both points. Meaning this, like, so what Jimmy Dore is saying is we need to find out who is really a true progressive. We know that if we have a vote for Medicare for all, it won't pass. Maybe if we can get Nancy Pelosi to bring this bill up in the House, maybe it'll pass in the House, but it'll die in the Senate, right? But what he's saying is now we'll know who we can actually vote for, who's an actual progressive.
Right.
And that makes sense to me. Like, okay, cool. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but this is kind of a dumb litmus test that doesn't actually accomplish anything really, except for, hey, what kind
For
of
outing, it's called outing the people who would participate and not.
right, which would be cool if this was like, hey, we got them 100% honest. But the thing is, like, believe it or not, you know who campaigned on a form of Medicare for all? Donald
Nancy
Trump,
Pelosi. Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Mitch McConnell. Like, honestly, who's to say that they wouldn't just do the same thing and vote for it? And yet, still, if it would reach the Senate, then they would block it. Like, how do we know who's going to actually stick with it? Like, who is the most purest progressive of them all? And that's part of my issue with Jimmy Dore thing here, is in a lot of ways it reads like, well, we need just the most pure progressive, and that's great because we have all of these litmus tests and all of these little, you know, gatekeepers, and at the end of the day, Scott, we're going to end up with the most purest progressive ever. And hopefully that one person, his vote or her vote, will actually do something, but it won't because it's one goddamn vote, and we kicked out everyone else because we like to play games. And that's my issue with it. Like, yeah, there's arguments on both sides of it that why this is a good deal, why it's not a good plan. I'm not going to pick a side here, but the one thing I will say is we cause so much infighting and so much cannibalism that at the end of the day, we're going to piss people off and turn people away. And,
Yeah,
you know,
well, especially considering or vote them out of office next time around.
yeah, or, and I think that would actually hurt a little bit more is there's people like Cenk Uygur and Jimmy Dore got into this big scrap, and Jimmy Dore basically called Cenk out for being a sellout and blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool, but what are you going to do with the Young Turks fans who were actually fans of Cenk Uygur and were progressives? Are they just going to switch to Jimmy? No, they're not.
I don't know. My
You know,
opinion of Cenk Uygur fans are another story.
yeah, but they're if you call out Cenk as being all, oh, he's just a corporatist sellout, whatever. Well, then these people are most likely going to get turned off. Let's just say they follow. You might get 10% of them to flip, right? But what you also could be doing is causing them to go, well, see, this is the problem with being as far left as Jimmy Dore. And the thing, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Jimmy Dore, but it's the way he handles these things, the way,
Well, he's what it
you know
is
what I'm
Jimmy
saying?
Dore is just tired. He's tired. I mean, you know how much he's been calling out hypocrisy all over the place. I think he's just mad,
He
and
is.
he wants people to stand up and stand up now, and it's just not going to happen, even as mad as he gets.
And I respect it, and I totally get it. And he brings up the argument that, well, the Tea Party did this, and they were incredibly effective at it. And it got me looking into what the Tea Party actually did. And dude, the Tea Party, their final stand like this, like literally, I think it had to do with like AstroTurf or something. Like it wasn't it wasn't Medicare for all. Like, and not that I'm saying we should be against Medicare for all, but the thing is, people are terrified of change. There's a reason why Make America Great Again or bringing back the soul of America or whatever crap Biden ran on, why it sticks though. And that's because people, like, you're one of the most intelligent more right-wing people I know as far as just logical thinking, pretty grounded. But even you are scared of Medicare for all. Like, we've had debates over and over about it. So you think you're gonna get the entire country to flip on it right now? Like, I don't know. And again, we gotta try,
Yeah,
right?
we can't even get pot legalized, and that should have happened 20 years ago.
Yes,
And they were
yeah.
talking about it 20 years ago.
Or privatize prisons, legalize them. There's definitely a lot of things that I just think we have to work at it. And again, am I saying we shouldn't bring it up? No, we should. But I just wouldn't decide to cannibalize my own side based on something that probably, at the end of the day, isn't going to pass anyway. And I don't know. I
Well,
mean,
that's what I'm saying. He's lost patience. I mean, now would not really be the time. Just even though, of course, it would be great if they were efficient and we didn't have this to deal with, like the COVID situation and stimulus situation. We've got a lot on our plate at the moment. I mean, the moment that we can put one of those things as a side note will be a moment where we can take a deep breath as well. So
I think,
he's
well, and I think part of his argument, though, is that's why this is the best time, is people realize how much we really need Medicare for all. And again, I completely agree with him. I do. It's just the fact that we create, how people in media, independent media or whatever, they create like a cult following. And these people are edgier and they're more woke, they're more whatever than the people they actually listen to. So Jimmy Dore fans are probably like Jimmy Dore times 100. And so these same people, they don't like anybody on the left because they're not as evolved as Jimmy Dore. And it's like, okay, great, that's fantastic, but that means that AOC, Ilhan, none of them, they're all sellouts. So basically, every time we nominate someone to be in a place of power, then they just turn to sellouts. Is that what you're saying? Like, completely omitting like what Ro Khanna or Bernie Sanders has recently done, what the squad has even recently done for the stimulus and for things like that. Like, they just completely forget that these people do progressive things. Like, they're not malicious. They're trying to play a game, and they see something from a different point of view than we do, and that's, you can disagree with them, but to like throw them out, so to speak, and be like, well, they're not true progressives. I'm done with them. Like, all you're doing is hurting the party. I feel like, and like that was one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to talk about it, but I also want to bring it up with you because you've been in like that, maybe I wouldn't say libertarian, but that odd conservative world for a while. And the correlation that Jimmy Dore made about the Tea Party. Let me ask you, what happened to the Tea Party?
I just think they didn't have any support. Basically they had to pull people from other sides to become anything other than just a social ideology or fiscal ideology, really. But they just couldn't grant enough support. They couldn't pull people from the other side.
I mean, well, wasn't Ted Cruz like their leader or one of
Ted
them?
Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were a lot of politicians that offered Tea Party candidates before, but he's never been a Tea Party candidate.
So who was on their group?
Oh, that would require a Google search because it's been at least 8 years since that happened.
It's been a while, but like and by the way, they were funded by, I mean, they had PAC money, so they had millions and millions of dollars of PAC support, which by the way, the progressives don't, because guess what? We were too woke and too left for that, which again, I agree with, but also that's kind of like saying, okay, let's go to war. Now let's not take any ammo. you know,
It
like
was like they had Ross Perot after one of his failed presidential runs was a Tea Party supporter,
oh Jesus.
and yeah, I mean it was kind of it's kind of hard for me to go back. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure Perot was involved in that. But it seemed to be more of a grassroots movement, and it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't embraced very well by Washington in any way.
Yeah, no, I know, like John Boehner and people like that were, I mean, literally driven out by the Tea Party. But no, I just, and I guess I should, as a conservative as well, like when you see the story with like Jimmy Dore and the progressives or whatever, like somebody who I wouldn't say, I don't think you're actively against that side, but you're not, that's not your path. What do you think? Like, is this something that they just do all the time, or or do you see it on your side as well a lot, or what's your take
I
on that?
think, I think the right generally, even though, like I said, I'm a conservative with some things and extremely liberal with other things. So there's going to be some fighting, infighting with like, I don't have big family discussions for the most part about specific topics, because I just keep the ones that I'm, real right wing on, and I don't discuss the left wing ones. But which is the safe way to do it. But
It is.
I don't think that every time the right has no faith in left wing programs being any more or less, even if it's a perception, fiscally responsible all the way down the line. I think if a lot of people thought and that had trust in their government to manage the money correctly without significant waste, like just waste, and I mean waste as in, people get that old government job and they just sit on their asses, and they do. There are lots of, and there are also people who work their asses off in government jobs.
Yeah, I mean
And
that's
so it's
jobs
kind of,
in general.
but I mean, it's kind of like but you don't have faith generally in the government process of those needs. It seems like medical would almost, in a lot of ways need to be run some ways in the way we approach things militarily, fairly aggressive, and I just don't think that those things can correlate. We just have no trust in the government to do it well at all. Because if it needs to be done real well, if we do it, you know what I mean? Like, and we just don't. I think the right just doesn't have any faith that it could be implemented without just wasting
No,
tons and tons of
look,
money
I'm
where it
not.
doesn't need to
Yeah,
go.
I'm not under any disillusion about. I mean, obviously, if right wing people agreed with the left wing people, then we wouldn't have half of the debates that we have. Our country would be in a lot better place. But no, I meant like the infighting as far as that's concerned. Like, see, for me, I just seem to think that, especially the left, and not even like Democrats, but the left, they tend to infight all the time. And who's a sellout and who's not left enough, that we end up just cannibalizing ourselves. And
Yeah,
it's not
is
saying
alienating each other, thus causing, basically stalling in anything that could have been done. And
yes.
a lot of times the right's like, well, look, they can't even agree on what they're supposed to do, and yet you want a program that even the left can't come together and say this will work. And a lot of times, these politicians, they don't. And the other scary thing is, for as smart as we think these people are, which I don't, you never see them, for the most part, as they're sponsors of a lot of bills. And in fact, they'll come up with, let's make America great with flowers again. So we want to plant flowers. Well, they leave it up to other people. And granted, you have to have the help. Like, well, we're going to plant indigenous flowers. You don't want to plant flowers from another, area of the world where they overtake our indigenous flowers. Just like, if you bring an animal in, just ask Florida about pythons. It's like, oh shit, they're eating everything. You got to be real careful. In other words, you have to have professionals. Well, it doesn't seem like anyone, big financial decision is it's like the people who sponsored it never looked into it to see what has been done with that plan or that bill under their name.
Or like
And
they'll grandstand and they'll like I don't know they'll find out that Gerber daisies are owned by black people or Mexicans or somebody and they'll be like we're gonna make the country great again and we're gonna plant Gerber daisies everywhere and they don't look into the fact that like Gerber daisies aren't indigenous to this part and it'll kill off fauna and whatever. Is that what you're saying? Like
well, no, I don't. I'm not
I know
no,
nothing.
I
By the
mean,
way, I know nothing about
I'm
Gerber
okay.
daisies. I was just throwing out a
Okay, I'm
point.
talking about just like, and this is something we do all the time. There's reasons that you can't import when you come across a border check. You can't bring certain fruits and certain animals
Well,
across,
you can.
and just like certain animals
We like to call
and
that
certain fruits.
we call that the Mexican fifth hole. Like
Well, it just depends on how big your truckload is. But
that's how my people get
but the
stuff
reason
across.
that you're not, like, for instance, you can buy piranhas in you can buy them in Texas. You can take them home, and or wait a minute, I've got them. I think I've got it backwards. Piranhas. No, in many southern states where the temperature doesn't get above a certain degree, you can't buy piranhas because there's a possibility that they could naturally reproduce in local lakes because the temperature of the water doesn't get cold enough to kill them off every year.
So
Okay, but
if it, okay, yeah, go ahead, go ahead. Like I
so
was
if you
gonna
could
ask
go north,
specifics. It's pointless.
like above Oklahoma, I'm pretty sure you can buy them in Kansas. You can buy piranhas and take them home to your aquarium because you can deposit the piranhas because people are stupid and they take their pets and they dump them in, local places. And, you don't have any worries about that piranha reproducing in a local lake because it'll get too cold.
I think you're
Piranhas
going
are
too
South
deep on.
American, by the
You're
way.
going way too deep on piranhas here. Just
Well, but my point is that you can't. There's the reasons that we have those things there. But what if they do a bill that somebody said, well, we'll take. Nobody's going to do something that stupid with piranhas. Nobody. And in other words, a lot of these bills get out of their hands. Things get changed with them, and then they start to get stuffed with, well, if I'll vote for this if you fund this program and that program, and we start to lose the focus of what the bill was in the first place, passing a core system. If you build a computer, you add on things later that you don't need for, say, your course, and I want a bigger hard drive. Well, you can get away with the smaller hard drive for a while. And I want a better video card. Well, this is how much money we have now. So let's get this working, prove that the system works before we add on tons of programs.
I just love that you went from flowers to piranhas to computers.
Well, they're all. It's called make sure a system is bloated and can be kept in check by system checks and balances, kept healthy and kept working, and simple enough for people to understand where it's easier to implement. Because my God, our government and body implementing even computer changes in any government system is like getting in a fist fight with a tiger. You're going to lose because you're outmatched by complexity and, old bureaucracy.
And money.
And so,
and lots of money.
Well, yeah. And then what ends up happening is you just have to end up hiring out to some other company to come in and do it for you. And then you lose the power to change things and to implement things that implement changes or additions that you want because it doesn't work with the hired out system.
Yeah.
So all of those metaphors just say, don't trust the U.S. government to go in and do it and keep it simple. And if they're going to take over something, it needs to be, and there are always little things that have to be fixed and changed along the way. But that doesn't mean that you add in, stipulations that aren't as important, and that I just see it as being a mess. And of course, we could use it.
I've completely lost where you're, because I was just asking if the infighting is the same on the right.
Well, I'm saying that's what
what
the
your
the
thought
infighting
is.
would be about between, you either trust the government, which some people do. It's like, oh, cops can't ever do anything wrong.
Oh,
That's the blue. And then you see, the same side going up like in Oregon this weekend and trying to, take over the state, the judiciary building there or whatever. And you hear them saying, the cops that are like start to tear gas and CS gas on people, they're screaming at the same people, like you're a bunch of tyrants. Well, what is it? Is it back the blue or is it a bunch of tyrants? Those people are on the same side.
no, that's a good point. By the way, speaking of that, I thought it was like really interesting. And again, speaking of Oregon and Washington, I heard I was messing around. If anyone's ever kind of bored, and trust me, you got to be real bored. But you can actually there's online audio logs of different presidents, and you just go to their museum. You can go to their digital museum. And I was at the Kennedy Museum. I was like looking through some audio logs, and it was
That's
actually pretty.
cool.
Yeah, no, like see, it's I'm not a dork, but I actually looked up specifically 63 in Birmingham, and I saw that call, and I was like, oh, I want to check that out. And it was, you know, it was JFK yelling at a military official, one of the main guys down there in Birmingham, and he's cussing him out. He's like, "I'm watching you on TV. What the are you people doing down there? You guys got some screws." He was going crazy on this guy, and he was like, it was just interesting 'cause he was like, "In no goddamn way do I want military boots on U.S. ground. It's you got to pull out now. This is fucking ridiculous. I care about the people, the safety of the people of this country, and we both goddamn know that our military has no idea how to play peacemaker in our own country." And I
Yeah,
just thought
that's
that,
not what they're used for. And you shouldn't ever ask them to do that either.
no, I just thought that was like really cool because it was really interesting. And then you take that to like Donald Trump, like we need our troops to invade our own country, essentially. Like it's a very like for JFK, like that's the angriest people have heard him. Like this was like treason to him. Like it was that bad. And just how like we get lackadaisical with certain ideology that happens over time, and it's weird because yeah, like, and I kind of looked more into this because I mean, look, I was born in the '80s. I have no recollection of any of, but yeah, apparently the fact that we had U.S. troops on, in Birmingham, that was a big problem. Like the country was pissed at the government for doing that. And yeah, like here we are 2020, people are like, we need troops here in the country. It's weird. It's very
Well,
weird.
I mean, not necessarily defending Trump, but he was more uh, haunting the local government leaders, in say some of these states, like for instance, like Seattle or in some of
You
those
shut
places
your
that were having a
goddamn
lot of
mouth about
issues
Seattle.
because the local, and it wasn't even necessarily the local police, it's the local government, the mayors and the governors refusing to take controls of basic situations that got out of hand. If they'd have just done their job and not had their hands restricted in the first place, for people who were violently causing crimes and doing things, they were afraid to get hands on. It was like a secondary, like, are you going to take care of your business or do I have to send them in, kind of thing. Like, and people, I agree, that would be the last thing that anybody wants. But what do you do when there's almost an insurgency within your country, and it's really just caused by the local government, playing politics with the local extremists when they do things like that? Just like they cleared the second version of Chaz shop in not Seattle. Where was it this weekend?
I don't know. Like you pay way more attention to that than I do. I don't really.
Well, they had two parts at a homeless encampment, and then they also had the second Chaz shop. I mean, fully, they had guards in black and all that kind of stuff. And apparently, and there was a couple hundred people. They arrested about, I think they arrested about 15 or 16 people because the local police and everybody went in and they cleared it again. Just no problem. It didn't last for months. They just went in and said, "Get out." I mean, there were pictures of and it was in basically a minority neighborhood and park where there were people screaming, "Get out of my park."
Homeless, though, you said.
There were two separate ones. There was a homeless encampment on a separate park that they didn't have any problems with, but the secondary Chaz Chop was at a different park that was close, and it was kind of fortified. The amount of trash and refuse left is I've seen videos of a real estate guy who sells stuff in the area, and he drove around it before and after. And but I'm saying they went in and they took care of it. Nobody got shot, nobody was killed, only a few people arrested. And it was no different than the last one, except it was kind of in an open park instead of people, taking over businesses in downtown. So, I mean, I don't know what you do if the police have their hands tied, which I'm always afraid of confrontations with any police. I would never even talk to a police officer.
But see, that's where we get on to number one, and even you said the military has no idea how to de-escalate a situation. They only if it's
right.
if it's a powder keg, you're just throwing a spark on it.
Well, it was only a powder keg because the opportunities that the local law enforcement had to quell these things and to remove the threat, they weren't allowed to. They were told to stand down. And
almost all of them, because again, you did have let's be clear, he wasn't just talking about that one area. He was talking about Chicago. Remember? He started saying we have too much gun violence
where the riots were happening and the looting and all that stuff.
And by the way, 3% of all the protests turned into looting and rioting. So 3%.
Right, but when you include tiny little towns that have a protest of 40 people or 100 people and there's nothing, it's a big metropolis that has thousands of businesses burned, looted, shootings, murders. They're on a different scale when they had that. So, I mean, it could be 3%, but that percent in a large metropolis, they turn into a different monster every time. You don't have a big protest in San Diego or in LA and you compare it to 100 people holding signs peacefully in some small town. I mean,
let's also be clear too. The ones that broke out into looting and rioting started because they started getting tear gassed. Because let's look at it this way, and you know what? There's a statewide, everywhere when it comes to protesting, they have curfews, right? So the MAGA march that was happening here a couple weeks ago, they were out at 2, 3 in the morning, still protesting and rioting, or not rioting, but protesting and marching, right? The police didn't show up and start tear gassing them. How come? You know what I'm saying? But when they're in California and it's past 7 o'clock and they had the curfew, they started tear gassing them. You guys gotta leave. What happened? They got pissed. You understand where that's not the same, as per you, but it's okay for thousands of Trump supporters to be marching
I would
around
disagree and say that there were some of these protests. There was all kinds of crime going on within them way before any tear gas canister. Now, did some of them exacerbate with that kind of stuff?
Majority of them got bad after the cops started shooting either tear gas.
A lot of them, the
bullets.
cops never even came through some of the areas that were, burning and people. I mean, it's a bigger monster in big cities. I just think that there's always that, just like Jake Paul and the rest of those douchebags who went out running around and looting the malls and stuff with other people like idiots on video. it's almost a fun frenzy where people think they're not going to get busted because it's a mass deal. I mean, I understand there's an allure to it, especially the younger you are and you have less to worry about,
Again,
to
you're
go
also
out and,
talking about just dumb white kids, and yeah, they're.
well, a lot of them were dumb white kids. I mean, I'm not putting a race on this.
But
There
I'm
were.
talking about the legit protests though, and we saw so. I mean, remember the old white dude who just got like. I mean, he got his bell rung by that cop.
Oh, he came up to him and knocked him out before he hit the ground, and all he had was a little sign. I mean, I'm terrified of police because they don't just get to smack you; they get to smack you and then say, put 10 charges on you and say that your hand brushed up against their helmet, and that's assault on a police officer. I understand. I'm probably the last person to be saying that violent revolts don't work, but uh, it or at least aren't warranted.
And you know,
But at the same
ultimately
time,
though,
I'm just
see,
saying
here's my issue.
that would be a reason for other people to want the military in places. Personally, I just let the cities burn.
Yeah, because they would fix themselves over time, like
Or
like
nobody would come back and everybody would move away.
or
And so if
a
you
lesson would actually be learned, and they would like it would get corrected, is what would happen. Like you got to let
Yeah,
communities.
the correction would be all the small businesses, all the local owned mom and pop joints, all the little grocery stores on the corners, and all those places that were looted and destroyed couldn't come back. Thus, they can't support the community. Can't even be supported by anything but big box stores. And then those aren't even any. Those aren't close. They're just you make your situation even worse by doing that because it wasn't. They didn't just attack big box stores. They went after everything, and
Yeah,
because
no,
they're
no,
in a frenzy.
you're right. I forgot about all the empty cities that we have from the rioting that happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Yeah, I forgot about all those because
All the
they're
what?
everywhere. All the empty cities we have because of the rioting that happened in years past.
There are
Because
lots of cities that had.
that totally happened. Like Los Angeles
There are
is now
lots of
just
cities
barren.
that I can actually give you a couple cities that were supposed to be havens for that kind of stuff with little policing, and people didn't come back. I'm saying, as much as I don't want the police around, if there's not a threat, at least of some kind of law and order, there are people there willing to exploit that. Just, I know because I've known a lot of those people.
No, and those are scumbags. But the point is ultimately nothing got done, and that's my thing. Is it's just gonna be worse. The next time this
Yeah,
happens, it's just going to be worse because nothing got done. Why?
well,
Because
I think it didn't get done because of political reasons. They didn't
yes,
want to.
because when it actually got to a point where the people said we need to do something about it, what happened? Oh, the people rose up against the people who were protesting it. And so the law
We
the police
we
never the
shouldn't have to
police
do that, though.
it doesn't matter. The police and the
Well,
politicians
no, I mean
the
I
police
do,
and the
but then again, I
politicians
also don't want the people who rise up against the criminals to be persecuted or charged with a bunch of crimes as vigilantes because they took it into their hands because the law enforcement would. You know what I mean? Like I'm afraid that they're going to punish the people who stand up for themselves as well.
I mean, the police and the politicians never had to answer for any of it.
They didn't. No, they of course they didn't.
And why is that? Because media turned everyone against each other. And everybody fell in line like freaking tools and the sheep that they are.
Well, we
Like
need to call Jeff Bezos and ask him to please stop.
you watch the who's those that white right wing family? The one that actually supported the protesters. They were like one of the few people I was like, holy crap, those people. The Bundy, the Bundy family. I was
Right, right.
they're gonna have another thing where they do the exact same thing, and the right wing and the people like that are like, oh, they're heroes, and they're holding guns against cops, and that's fine. And the left are gonna say, oh, they're terrorists and blah blah. No one's principled, and that's again why this country, it's where it's at. And I'm tired of people acting like, well, it's the politicians, and it's all, no, it's us. It's us because
It's definitely us too.
we are
I
so
mean,
easily
if you allow things to
manipulated.
happen, you don't care, well, then it's on your dime as well.
Yeah, no,
I would love for a mass revolt to have consequences other than just, some people deciding to loot and some people deciding, but I don't think it really has much effect at all. I think it's because a lot of people are way too afraid to get off their couch, and a lot of people are too old. We have an aging population, and they don't want to. They're like, well, my time for that's over, and
that's a lot of people. Yeah.
it will take too many people to get something quickly changed. Like, you can have quite a few people march. It looks like you had 10 million people march on Washington and demand either the resignation or the implementation of some new, program or politician to be resigned. You know how quick you can just take that 1 out of every 10 of those people would be willing to stand up physically to like police violence. So that now you've got 1 million people that aren't running away. And then how quickly 1 million people can be subdued with everything from CS gas to microwave weapons to police batons. And now you're looking at 100,000 people, and those 100,000 people may have to face weapons of a different kind, lethal weapons. And it's just it's almost like you even have to turn, if things have to get so bad that even law enforcement and everybody else is completely like, there's no question about what's right or what's wrong. And that line is so blurred these days. I don't think we can get there.
I think it's the exact same as it's always been. I just think that, again, people are easily manipulated. I mean, that's a lot of it. And like, if you say, and here's another thing, is everyone has their own team. And so if your team goes along with something, you're more apt to believe that. You're more apt to see that view. It's like, it's the whole like infighting with the Medicare for all thing, for instance. Like, um, for some reason, progressives think like so many people are going to step up and fight for Medicare for all. And as much as I want that to happen, it's just not going to happen. Like, people, not all, but a lot of people are so oblivious when it comes to politics in general, let alone specific issues, that you're just not going to get any numbers. The one thing I'd like to, talk about is like vaping. Vaping's a big part of my life, Here in September 9th, they rolled out all these restrictions to kill small business. By the way, under Trump, killed more small business than I guarantee any of the looting did. And let me say this: we had a point, like all the vape industry had gotten together, and we're begging people on Twitter, on everywhere, to, hey, call in, complain about this, get this, uh, sign our petitions so that this doesn't get enacted, blah blah blah. Do you know, at the end of the day, and by the way, small amount, we have like, we're guessing, and by the way, there was some analysis done into this, but that there are about 15 million vapors in America. Can you guess how many people signed the petition?
100,000.
It's like 220,000. Like, and that's something like, if that's part of you, like what you do, and I don't know how many people I heard since then, like, well, this saved, you know, this stopped me from smoking. This has been the greatest thing I've had. And
Which you couldn't get them all, even to log in and sign a petition.
exactly. So yeah, you
Well,
think, like, so you think they're all gonna jump on Medicare for all? Like, especially when a lot of them have health care, probably? No. Like, people we're lazy.
well, you're just telling me we're ripe for a Nazi takeover because most people wouldn't do anything about it.
I mean, am I wrong?
No, well, that's what I'm saying. I just people are you're asking people to level up when it comes to their thinking process and everything from their own social responsibility to what is good for Adam is also good for Steve and Eve. So it's kind of
I like the Adam and Steve reference better. But like, left-wing media
Well, it's an open relationship.
the left-wing media today, like, what's its big talking point? Are they talking about the stimulus? No, they're talking about how Donald Trump is going to enact martial law. What? Like, apparently he had used the term martial law, and he has talked about some stuff. It's so like, it has no teeth at all. But this
Yeah,
is
and Trump says all
all.
kinds of stuff.
Yeah, oh, and I think, we talked about it before. Trump's the type of guy who he wouldn't be against it, but as soon as he had to start making a plan, he'd be like, nah, I got something else to do, and he'd switch on ONA or OAN and Newsmax or whatever crap he watches and go eat a cheeseburger and fall asleep. Like, he's not, you know. And but there again, do you remember what did right wing news, like, what did they talk about constantly in the mid 2000s with Barack Obama?
In the mid 2000s? Are we talking about like 2005?
No, 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 like 2010, 2012, in that time with
Uh,
Barack Obama. Remember? Martial law, he's gonna come take your guns. Like, it's just the
well,
same
it was either
crap.
that or the birth certificate was wrong.
No, that was a big one too. Yeah. No, but like, it, by the way, I kind of forgot about the birth certificate crap, which is true. I guess. Okay, did I'm gonna go quick. We gotta cut this here in a second. But did anyone question Bill Clinton's, like, his victory in '94? Or, I'm
I
sorry,
don't
not
know. I think it was
'94.
pretty sweeping. I don't think it was that close.
So the first one of these, of like, hey, I don't think that dude actually won the election. That was 2000, which, by the way, they did a recount and Bush didn't win. Gore actually did win in 2000. But in '04, Bush won overwhelming. They didn't really question that, I don't think. But '08, yeah, I forgot about the birth certificate thing. So, like,
Yeah, but that was a separate argument other than his actual Obama one without any issues.
he did, but then they were basically declaring that he didn't really win. Like, he shouldn't be the president because of that. Like, that was their version of, we need to impeach him.
I still think of Michelle Obama's a man.
Oh, shut up. That's the stupidest. That's the worst argument I've ever heard. Have you dug deep into any of that?
Well, I've listened to all the, I thought they were pretty funny. I
Oh,
mean,
it's
just as a humor
ridiculous.
thing.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Like, well, no, because if you look, she was born a man, and then they got married, so that would make nothing that he did possible. What did?
There is some truth to how they got hooked up, though,
Here's my thing, though.
with Oprah Winfrey.
No, no. Here's my question. With all of this planning and coercion and all of this to basically, by the way, have someone have a gender transformation, don't you think they would have done something more than nothing? Like, Obama did diddly squat. He was like
Yeah, no,
the second most
he.
feckless president there was.
Well, then it's what better than to have a figurehead without that much baggage, where you have to go, back to his father, who was a militant, but then again, he was never around, and it was that that's how far you have to dig back. But there are some weird things about probably every president. I'm going to
Oh,
get
I'm
real,
sure. Oh, yeah. Dude, if you
but
became the president, I'm sure we would start finding out some weird junk on you. Like, you probably
uh,
would find stuff out. You're like, oh, I didn't know that
I
about my.
forgot I did meth that night.
No, I'm just saying, like, and even Trump as well. Like, oh, the Russians and the deep state and blah blah. Like, well, maybe if that were true, he would have done something. Like, they're.
Yeah, no, but that being said, we're expecting the American public to step up and open the law books and open history books and open other things and
Or just.
at least come to terms with the current state of America and where it needs to go. And or at least form an opinion on that based upon anything other than talking head.
Or just be logical for half a second and be like, well, God, if they did all of that to make Obama the president, do you think they would have him have, I don't know, done something? Like, it's ridiculous. It's like putting in $1 billion into a vehicle and then the thing not work. Like,
Well,
I think
we
that would be
we
a
can talk
failure
about
for
that.
sure.
That's happened too.
Well, that's true.
It's
Well,
called NASA.
there was an airplane, the F-22. Yeah.
Oh, no, the F-22 rocked. That's just the problem. The F-35 has been a
That
joke
that's
by
it. That's
comparison.
it. That's it. The F-35. That time. Although, isn't the F-22 kind of, doesn't it have? Uh, you know, we don't have time for it, but I had heard it has defense issues or something. But anyway,
No, the F-22 was excellent, and in fact, they've gone back to retrofit. The problem with the F-22 is they couldn't upgrade their like basically the heads-up display. The computer systems in them were almost archaic by the time the F-35 and what they expected of the technology to be involved with that craft. So they actually have gone back now recently to upgrade some of the F-22s. But the F-35 strike fighter separated into three different functioning crafts has been a joke. It really has. They should have chose a different style to it, and pilots are the first ones to gripe about that. They're
I
still
will.
they're still building F-18. They're still
I,
building Hornets.
I will take your word for it. I do know there was an airplane. I can't remember, but not the point. The point is we will be back probably later on this week. I don't know when. Everything's kind of up and down. We're technically probably should be like every other show and take a break, but we'll come back in at some point. We got to do before the end of the year. We're doing our best and worst list of the year, and
And it won't be what you expect.
no, it's all going to be about my penis. Um, good and bad. And also we're gonna do some.
Well, that's a short list.
Well,
Oh,
it's just a cameo in a movie. It's a small part, if you get what I'm saying. Man, I had to go a long way for that joke. But anyway, and we will be doing a stream here or there. Um, it's probably actually the next thing we're gonna probably do is a stream. I think it might be easier, and I think now as I have it laid out, and I haven't confirmed anything with you, Scott, but I was thinking a stream during the day on Thursday would actually be a pretty cool idea, but I have to run it with you and see. And also with my schedule, got a lot of stuff going on. And not just the holidays, families having operations. I got a funeral tomorrow. We got stuff left and right.
yeah, I get a funeral tomorrow too. Isn't that great?
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. Is it
When?
local?
Mine is, yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see if we're going to be at the same funeral tomorrow.
Oh, I'm not going.
Oh, okay. I have to.
What? Not the point. I was just gonna ask you why, but that's that's probably unimportant. But yeah, no, that'd be. What time is yours?
I think one-ish.
Oh, that's what time mine would be if I were to going.
Uh,
I,
it's
it's
it's probably the same person.
gotta be the same person. There's a singer in my band. Like he was a former singer in my band.
Yeah, no, it's not that. It's not that person. This is an elderly person who's died, but obviously
Oh,
there are quite a few more deaths happening, and it's a COVID death too.
oh yeah. There's a COVID death funeral the day after tomorrow too, like Wednesday. So I've got employees who are taking off the work to go to his funeral. By the way, I think it's stupid because he just died recently of COVID, and the family has COVID, and they're going to the funeral. Like,
Yeah, that's
isn't that,
great.
yeah, right? Like it's like if you died of the Black Plague and people, well, we need to bury him with our hands and lick him a little bit too. Like, yeah, why would you go? I don't know. I'm staying the hell away from all that. But anyway, that's it for us. We will be back later on this week. You guys take care, and we
Take
will
it
see you
easy.
later.